Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to True Crime Groove. I'm your host, Maze, and with me as always is the Pineapple Queen. How are you doing today, Pineapple Queen?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. I just wanted to start this podcast by thanking some of the more loyal viewers, listeners to the podcast. The first person I'd like to thank is Cindy in Los Angeles, California. We appreciate you listening. Next is Anne from Withersea, England. Sounds like a neat place. And the third is my good friend Tex, who just wants to be. She's from down south, she said. Ironically, though, not Texas. I'd also like to thank whoever keeps thumbsing down our video. The one person that keeps doing that. It all feeds the algorithm, so we do appreciate the support. Also, if you'd like to have us mention, if you're a loyal listener, please just leave your name and where you're from in the comments of the video, and we will thank you on a future show. For 50 years, Girl Scouts had flocked to Camp Scott for their annual Girl Scout camping trip. But on June 13th of 1977, tragedy struck, and no Girl Scout has ever been back to Camp Scott since. This is the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. And this is True Crime Groove. Let's get our groove on and talk some true crime. Listener discretion is advised. Disturbing content ahead. This is your warning. On June 12th of 1977, a bus full of Girl Scouts drove up the trail in Camp Scott, headed for the Kiowa location part of the camp. It's spelled Kiowa, Kiowa. I hope that's right. I hope I'm saying that right. Among the Girl Scouts were three girls.
Lori Lee Farmer, age 8. Michelle Heather Gouset, age 9. And Doris Denise Milner, age 10.
Yeah, I believe Gouset was, or not Gouset, Lori Farmer was the youngest girl at the camp. She was 8. She was set to turn 9 in like a week or two, but as of that day, she was only 8 years old. The girls made their way, like I said, back to the Kiowa area. They set up their tents, which were numbered. The three girls had been assigned to tent number 8, which, as it so happens, was the tent furthest away from the counselor's tent. So it was all the way over by the path to the showers, and it was the furthest away from the furthest tent away from the counselors.
Yeah, I was going to say something from experience. I don't know if you did Boy Scouts or anything like that, but
But I spent quite a few days in sleeping on the ground in the woods.
yes. Well, I did do the Girl Scouts. I was a brownie. I didn't make it to Daisy's, but or I think it's backwards. But the point is that there was a weekend that we did stay in something similar. It is a Girl Scout camp. They had the tents, and um you stayed with your troop, and the adults stayed in that thing as the tent as well. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I have a 6-year-old. She's only 2 years younger than Farmer Lori, and I honestly, as a parent, looking into this, I'm thinking, man, it's already hard enough, you're watching your kid, she's gonna go spend a week and have a great time. You're setting her off to do something on her own. And I know when I went, it was terrifying. It was the first time that I was away from my like um my home, sleeping outside in the woods with a bunch of people that I've only hung out once a week. It's kind of like, they weren't my I to me it's, it's nerve-wracking. And these little girls, went off and tried to have an adventure. Um
And that sounds a little like Doris Milner. Her parents had described her as being very excited at first to go to camp and then getting a little more apprehensive as the date grew closer. She was starting to worry about missing her mom and her sister. Michelle Gousset was into sports. She was really excited about going to the camp because she had been the year before and had a really good time. She also liked to grow flowers, her mother said.
yeah, I believe she even asked her mother to look after her flowers while she
Yeah,
was gone.
mom was put in charge of babysitting the flowers while she was away. The girls all got their tents put up. There was a fourth girl that was supposed to be in with the three girls in tent number 8, but a mix-up, an administrative mix-up had put her in another tent somewhere, so she wasn't in there. That night there was a really large thunderstorm that rolled through, and the counselors said that during the night they had heard what they described as a sound. And the reason they described it as a sound is because they said that it wasn't a sound that a human would make, really, but it wasn't really a sound that an animal would make either. It was just kind of a weird sound that they were hearing throughout the night. Um, the next morning, the counselor got up. One of the counselors got up. I remember her saying that she got up early because she liked to take a shower with hot water. She wanted to have hot water for her shower because anyone who's been camping knows that these public facilities, they run out of hot water really fast. So she wanted to have some hot water for her shower. So she headed out and down the path of that heads to the showers, and on her way she saw an object laying on the side of the path. She went over to the object and saw that it was a girl, a little girl. And that little girl was deceased. The body she found was the deceased body of Denise Milner. She then noticed that there were two other sleeping bags laying on the path. And I don't remember if she went over and looked in or not. I think she did, that she opened the sleeping bag and felt, like, I'm not sure she looked, but she felt.
She could feel the body
Right.
parts.
She could feel that there was a person in those sleeping bags.
Yeah.
So at that point, she called the police, the sheriff's office. The Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation also was called. They took the lead on this investigation. When they got there, they started looking around and they noticed some weird stuff that was in and around the camp itself. They found like eyeglasses, like different pairs of eyeglasses. A lot of the tents had been gone through that night, and a lot of they found several pairs of glasses. And what it appeared to them, it was that somebody had gone into the tent and taken some personal items, not just the glasses, but specifically the glasses, taken glasses from the girls, tried them on and then discarded them, just threw them on the ground. And there were several instances where this occurred. But actually, we want to go back a bit, just because you were saying they evacuated the camp first.
Yeah, I mean, before the police got there, of course, they were trying to make sure that nobody else had to witness these bodies. So, they evacuated the girls out on buses. And, I mean, as you were saying at the beginning, like, so
Well, you were saying the parents didn't know.
well, right. So, that back then in the 70s, they're not going to
No,
call however
no
many
cell phones,
children.
right?
Right. So they went ahead and they got them on buses, got them back into I believe it was Broken Arrow is where they came from.
Right.
Yeah. So um the parents had no idea whether or not their kid was going to get off that bus um until they actually did. So I don't know, but to put myself in these parents' shoes, to sit there and not know what's going on, but praying like, "Oh my god, is my kid going to get off this bus? Like what all happened?"
Yeah. It was a different time, because back then too, that was back in the day where you could leave at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and not come home, and like in the summertime, until 10 o'clock at night, or
Right.
maybe or your mom maybe might call you home for dinner, and then you'd be right back out until it got dark.
Yeah.
And parents just didn't worry about that kind of thing back in those days. But in any event, the the investigators started going over the crime scene. They got to the bodies. They unzipped the two sleeping bags and found the two other girls dead, Michelle Gousset and Lori Farmer. It appeared to them, and also this was described. One of the investigators described this as an eerie crime scene, like one of the most eerie crime scenes he'd ever worked. Like, people were hushed. There was like very little talking. Everybody was just doing their job. There was some whispers and stuff like that, but there wasn't a lot of like noise. And he thought that was strange. He'd never really been on a crime scene that was similar to that.
Mm.
Um, but they got the girls out. They realized that the two girls that were in the sleeping bag were bludgeoned to death with either an object or their fists. The uh, Denise Milner had been strangled and raped. They determined that the two girls, the two girls in the sleeping bags, they had been killed in. They believe they were killed in the tent, and then drug out to the trail. Whereas they believe he grabbed Denise Milner out of her sleeping bag, took her to the trail, raped her, strangled her, and then brought her sleeping bag out there, like threw it over top of her or something. But it was out there, and they also on the trail found some eyeglasses as well. They also found a red flashlight in between uh, Denise Milner's legs. They When they unzipped, I can't remember if it was either Michelle Gousset or Lori Farmer, but one of the investigators described her as looking asleep. That she didn't they couldn't see any like real injuries, and that she just kind of looked asleep.
Yeah, I believe that was Lori Farmer. She just looked like she was going to wake up and
Yeah, she wasn't.
yeah. I believe they also found duct tape,
Oh yeah, duct tape,
nylon rope
nylon rope.
next to the bodies as well.
That's right. Good job.
Yeah.
Good catch, PQ. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I believe that the duct tape was found or was linked to a farmhouse nearby, and they brought the farmer who owned the farmhouse in for some questioning and a lie detector test, which he did pass. So, in result of all of that, they did end up canceling him out as a suspect.
Right. So they want they have these 3 dead girls, and so the manhunt is on. They want to get a lead as fast as they possibly can. So they go ahead and call in some dogs, some tracking dogs. They were from Pennsylvania, and they were dubbed the Wonder Dogs because they had helped solve a case in Pennsylvania. They had picked the killer out of a lineup or something like
Yeah,
that. And
crazy.
right, so they brought in these dogs, and they started utilizing the dogs. Now, here's where this podcast goes a little into the spiritual realm, I guess you could call it. As it turns out, the main suspect in this case, which we'll get into here in a little bit, but he's a Native American, and this camp is right in the middle of a lot of Native American land. So, and a lot of Native Americans live on this land. Well, as it turns out, there's this thing that's called a medicine man, and basically, medicine men are part of the Native American tribes, and they're kind of like a cross between doctors and mystics. And it was said that one of these medicine men had burned something, burned this special kind of tobacco or something, and had put a curse on the dogs. And as it turns out, both dogs eventually did end up dying. One in fairly quickly. They had determined that he got some kind of heat stroke or something like that.
Yeah, I think they said like heat prosperation or something like
Yeah,
that.
I never
Which
heard. I don't. It's something with dogs. But
I mean, even they were like questioning it as they like put it on the death certificate. They were like,
yeah,
maybe.
I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
But so the dogs didn't work exactly the way that they had wanted them to. But eventually, they find this cave about 3 miles southwest of the
Mhm.
camp. It's got a newspaper in it, which they determined, and this kind of confused me a little bit. They had linked that newspaper with the red flashlight, and I'm not sure exactly how they did that. If I don't know if he put something over the lens of the flashlight, and
Yeah.
or if he had put something in the battery compartment of the flashlight, like folded up. I don't know if back in the 70s did they used to have to fold up newspaper and put it in flashlights so that the batteries would fit or something.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. I mean, I heard both things. I, what I do know is that both newspapers were from the same article. That there was something that linked them, whether it was the paper itself, the article that was on it, whatever it was, there was something that linked them, and
Well, yeah,
they were able to
and
determine.
we do apologize. Like I said, I read this thing and it didn't. It just the way they worded it. It just was. I'm like, okay, what? Huh? What? How did? Okay,
Yeah.
but that's not all they found in this cave. They
No.
also found
Uh,
duct, duct tape, plastic material that was used to cover the lens of the flashlight, red panties, glasses, and then 2 crumpled up photographs of a couple of women. So they had linked the glasses and the newspaper with the crime scene. Uh, they knew that the glasses came from one of the kids or the counselor at the camp. They knew the newspaper in the cave was in the flashlight at the camp. So that left basically the crumpled photographs. They didn't know what these were, so they got them out on TV and distributed that information nationwide. And it turns out that a prison guard at at the prison where Hart was in at the time, he was also a wedding photographer, and he had taken those pictures and he had asked Gene Hart to develop them.
So Gene Hart was he was in this I believe it's Mays County jail. Is that what that was?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was in jail or prison, but I believe he was in prison. But
Yeah.
maybe not when these photographs were developed.
Yeah. So well he was there and he was there for raping 2 pregnant women in 1966 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Um one of his victims, I believe, made a statement saying that she remembered he would make strange noises, almost animal like.
Well, right, kind of like what we described earlier when I said that it wasn't human, but it also wasn't animal either. It was a really weird, unique noise that
Right.
he made while he was raping her.
Right. And the other strange thing that she said he did was he tried on her glasses,
Yeah.
which, you know, when you're looking at these cases side by side, you're kind of like wanting to point fingers. Yes, they've got, this is our guy, right?
It's pretty coincidental that Gene Leroy Hart was a glasses freak.
Yeah,
And they found a bunch of eyeglasses scattered throughout the camp and in this cave and in the cave
right.
as well.
So, and of course, it was said that she was bound with duct tape, nylon rope, um, and she said that when everything was all said and done, um, he put a rag into her mouth, put duct tape over it, then put duct tape over her nose, and then left her in some wooded area and put like leaves and
Yeah, he thought she was gonna he thought she was
suffocate.
gonna
Yeah.
suffocate. So, but she didn't.
Um,
She
no. Luckily, she was able to get out and she was able to survive. She did leave her name anonymous, so that's why I've been saying she and the victim because we don't know what her name is.
right.
Um, but
He
um,
was eventually caught.
yeah,
He was found guilty and was given 308 years or whatever.
right. So, and then I believe like what I read, and I don't know if you read this too, but he didn't. So, because he was on the run.
Right.
He escaped
He
this
escaped.
jail.
Mhm.
But I heard that he did it twice. Did you hear that too?
Uh, I did not. I did not read that he did it twice, but like I said, he may have escaped from jail and then escaped from prison because I'm sure he did some jail time and then he eventually got the 308 years and was in prison for that. So it's
Yeah.
possible.
So, just a little bit of background on Gene. His mother and father were never married. Um, and his father, I don't know what the deal was between that, but the relatives weren't supposed to acknowledge him at all.
Right on the father's side.
Yeah, exactly. And so the stepfather was said to have been an alcoholic, which Gene did take care of him and had, I believe he lived with his stepfather and his mother. And, but it
Well,
didn't hold him back because in high school, he did good. He was
was a
a
football star.
yeah, a high school football star. He
Was
had
going
a
to was going to
scholarship.
go to college. Yeah, had a scholarship.
And so everybody in the town even, said like he's a real sweet boy, he's kind, nobody thought that he could have done something like what it was described he did to these two women.
Right. And
Um,
that might go a little bit towards why he was being helped. Because, like I said before, there's some things in the Native American culture where you do this, that, and the other, and they kind of have to help you. But also, he was a nice guy, like you said. People liked him, and so that would also make people more willing to give you a hand and hide you from authorities, especially a Native American hiding from the man, basically.
right. Yeah, and so I don't know too because he was only 22 when those the kidnapping, rape. I believe he also burglarized four homes during that period of time as well. So I think a lot of this shocked the town. They were like, how could this 22-year-old boy who was a superstar do something like this,
Yeah.
But as we know, a lot of people who have sick minds can live these double lives. Like Ted Bundy, the Green River Killer, BTK.
Yeah. They people thought they were all great people, great guys.
Yeah.
So it's definitely possible to do so. So at this point, they do have their prime suspect. They're pretty sure they know who did this. They start a manhunt, the largest manhunt in the Southwest. I'm not sure if it's to this day, but it definitely was for that time. They During this time they found another cave, and they found these four burnt fires, which in the Native American culture it was to symbolize a cleansing. Like that's what it meant. It's like to like cleanse the self of sins, I guess, basically. Um, so, like I said, he evades them. There's a investigator. What's his name?
Larry Bowles.
Larry Bowles. Right.
Agent Larry Bowles.
You were saying Larry Bowles had an informant.
Right.
That oh,
I believe the informant that he had did not wish to have his name be released. And so he was able to get some information about where
yeah,
Gene Hart was hiding out.
he wouldn't give him up at first. He wouldn't tell him at first where Gene was, but eventually he got him to talk and to tell him that a medicine man and his wife were harboring Gene. They were hiding him and providing for him, I guess.
Yeah,
Did you?
so April 6th, 1978, they brought in the medicine man's wife and basically asked her, where's Gene? We know you're harboring him. If you don't give him up, we're gonna come and take you, your husband. You're gonna, you know, basically they were gonna press charges for harboring the fugitive here, and they also, yeah,
Justice or something.
right, and they also said, we have three families who are
One,
not, yeah, that want to see him go through trial, like, and one of the families being the dad being a police officer, and he said, I'm going to give all of them your names, and that scared the shit out of her, so she gave him up.
ironically, when they arrested Gene Hart, he was wearing a pair of girls' glasses. They arrested him and they set forth to put him on trial and prosecute him for the murders. They
Believe that because Larry Bowles has, like, when he went and arrested him, he put him in his handcuffs and he walked him to the car. He asked him, did you kill those girls? And the only thing that Gene said to him was, quote, you'll
you'll
never
never
pin this on me, unquote.
you'll never get me for this.
Yeah. Yep.
which is telling.
Yep.
So so basically they had the evidence. They had some evidence that was sort of damning towards Gene, but they they had a hair that they said was a match, basically, but you can't really match hairs unless you have the root, which they didn't. They had seminal fluid, but it wasn't usable. And back in 1977, you couldn't really convict on seminal fluid alone because at that point there was no way to determine, there was no DNA testing basically, so wasn't really usable as far as a means of convicting. They didn't have any eyewitnesses, so nobody to say I saw that guy, he was in the camp and he did some bad stuff. So no eyewitnesses. So eventually they go to trial, and the state's case is, not only is it pretty weak, the courtroom, which you would think would favor the defendants, the families, wasn't. It was more pro Hart. The people that were attending and were tuning into this trial were more on Hart's side than they were on the family's side. The initial prosecutor quit, and they had to appoint another one, a new one. The media also was not with the victims. They were more in Hart's camp. They talked about him being racially profiled. They said that a lot of the evidence was trumped up. That we said before, there was semen found in the body. At first, it was said that there's no way it could be Gene's because he had had a vasectomy, but and so that would leave no active semen in sperm in the semen. But they found sperm in the semen, so they said, oh well, there you are, it's not Gene. But it turns out that Gene's vasectomy, either he never had one or they screwed it up because he had sperm in his semen as well. So that charge was kind of like, it could be him, but they could never really pin it on him. The evidence that they had wasn't fantastic, especially for the time period. But
Yeah, I mean, it was really sad, especially for these, families, the victims' families that had to sit there and I believe it was Gousset's mother who said she felt like when she walked into the courtroom that she was the guilty party. There was one
yeah,
day where like there was four medicine men like in the courtroom like working their
mojo.
yeah into the courtroom to rule in Jean's favor, and it's just like that would be so hard. Like Lori Farmer's mom, she explained that there was a time when she went into a restaurant and she said she found a donation. There was like a thing to donate money
for,
towards
for him.
Jean. Yeah, for him. And she said there was like news articles that like if he's not guilty that maybe the Dallas Cowboys might, you know, draft him and stuff like that. I mean, I couldn't imagine
Well, even
how unfair these victims' families probably felt. Their
yeah.
daughters were ripped away from them, and yet nobody's feeling any sympathy for them.
Well, and even the hair they found, the defense called its own expert to say, you basically what I said before, that you can't match a hair. The hair is similar, but it's not. There's no way to perfectly match a hair with a hair. So
Yeah.
that evidence was kind of negated, and so basically, in the end, he was acquitted. He was
Yeah.
acquitted of this crime,
I was
and
gonna say what just for this was Jean's hometown. So I think apparently I didn't know this, but there's a like the defense. They can move venues if they feel like they're not going to get the outcome that they want.
Right.
Apparently, the prosecution, they're
Can't.
not allowed. Yeah, they can't.
Yeah.
So,
Which that also made it tough to
yeah,
find 12 people that would convict him,
right.
um, in a place that's pretty small, and they're basically on his side. So,
Exactly.
like I said, he was acquitted. He wasn't going anywhere. It's not like sweet freedom was coming for him, because he was already serving a prison term for 308 years for rape. So he was going right back to prison. He went back to prison. They he eventually he pretty quickly, I should say, he died. He died in prison. So the best part about this case, I in my opinion, is that the whatever it is, the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, the OBOI, they have never stopped trying to solve this case. They have over the years done DNA tests, and they've been inconclusive. They've basically said, yeah, this sample's just not good enough for us to get a profile. And so, but even as recently as was it 2018, or I can't remember the exact year, but it's pretty recently, the city raised like $30,000 to have the evidence retested to see if, because as you know, as DNA technology advances, the evidence that might not have been able to been used in the past, it catches up. The technology catches up to where they can use it, or and get it. But as of that time, that but I'm not sure if did you see that about the $30,000 raised?
I did not. No.
Okay. Well, in any event, they did, and so it's good to know that they're still trying to solve this case. We would like to see this case solved as well. It was a horrific crime, and I'm pretty sure, I believe Gene is guilty. Do you believe Gene is guilty?
I do believe Gene is guilty. The MOs are identical to what he had done in the past. If that woman didn't get free the first time, she would have died. And that was his intention, was to have her, I mean, for her to be killed, like for her to die and
Well, it's
somebody
almost,
wander upon her. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like he improved, because he put the duct tape over her face, the woman in 1966, hoping the duct tape would do the job for him.
Mhm.
And then this time he made sure that
Yeah.
they were dead, because he
Strangled
manually
her.
strangled her, and so he made sure she was dead before he left that crime scene. So that to me even speaks to a level of learning, like perfecting your craft, if you will.
The unfortunate thing too about this is you have a man who did go to jail and prison and somehow escaped. And if
Well,
maybe he
Ted,
hadn't,
Ted Bundy escaped too. The set back in the 70s, it was just a lot easier to escape from prison than it is today.
right.
I mean, but people still escape today. So
Oh yeah.
escaping prison isn't necessarily you know the weirdest thing ever. I mean, it happens here and there, but it used to happen a lot more. I mean, it happened all the time.
Right. I
And
guess I
and
just
if you live in California, they'll just let you out, basically.
yeah.
You
I
don't even
guess
have to escape.
right. I guess I was just, thinking if he hadn't, like, would those three girls still be here? Like,
I think that had he not escaped, those three little girls would be old women today. Yeah,
yeah.
that's my opinion. Well, anyways, so that's the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. We want to thank you for listening. We want you to follow us on our platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you're going to listen to the podcast, we'd appreciate a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Doesn't matter to us. But weigh in. And like I said before, if you're going to be a loyal listener, go ahead and leave your name and city, and we'll say thanks in a future podcast.
And this is PQ signing out. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, peace, love, and stay groovy.